Welcome to the YouTube channel, Dr. Rob Pediatrics. This is the first in a short series of videos on things we talk about in the pediatric office. I hope to impart a little wit and wisdom of over 30 years, well, over 33 years, geez, I'm almost 60, of practice as a board-certified pediatrician caring for a few generations of kids. And I hope you enjoy these videos, find them a little educational or amusing, and most importantly, not too embarrassing for me. We're going to kick off with the first set of videos, which covers the 7 questions you should always ask at a teen well visit. There are no sponsors for these videos, so each one will be sponsored by a random object in my office. And kicking us off, number 1 is Bozo the Clown. Now, the king of bozos, obviously, locally, is in Chicago. There's been hundreds of bozos, but Chicago was the one. But sadly, I never got to play the grand prize game. Now, teen depression and anxiety is way more prevalent than when I first started. Each year it seems to get more and more. And with the pandemic, it is just exploding. And one of the questions is not, are you sad? Are you anxious? Because we're asking that all the time. But certainly you need to have written anxiety and depression screens and drug screens in your office. And we certainly do that, and we get the height and weights and the blood pressure and the vision and the hearing. But I don't let the teens out of the room without covering these 7 questions. So here comes question number 1. Kevin, where do you keep your cell phone charging at night? Now, I like to hold their cell phone in my hand when I ask them that question, because nothing gets a teen's attention like when you're actually holding their cell phone. It always works. It gets them pretty nervous. Now, not every teenager has a cell phone, and certainly I recommend that they should wait till at least 7th grade if possible, but most of them do. And when they answer, as they usually do, on their nightstand or even worse, under their pillow, my response is really loudly, "No!" I try to really shake them up a little bit. Now, cell phones are anxiety and insomnia machines, and at the very least, they should be in the other side of the room or even out of the room. If they can reach it from their bed, they're really much more likely to look at it. Now, their most common excuse is, well, it's my alarm clock. And my answer is, go to Five Below and buy an alarm clock. You don't need a $500 alarm clock. If it is their alarm clock, I ask them if they hit snooze, because when they hit snooze, they trade 9 minutes of deep, brain-repairing sleep for 9 minutes of really crappy sleep. Now, if the phone is on the other side of the room, they actually have to get out of bed to turn it off, and they're much less likely to get back into bed. It's better to sleep as long as you possibly can than to hit snooze. And actually, for most of them, mom or dad are their alarm clocks anyway. Now, I understand that phones have become an important part of many of these teens' lives. I ask them if they're on Snapchat, if they're on Instagram, if they watch YouTube videos, if they watch TikTok videos, and the answer is usually or almost always yes, 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 and of course yes. But they're never on Facebook because Facebook is for old people. Now, social media can be okay. It's a reality for many teens, and it can have positive effects too, but there's a lot of FOMO, fear of missing out, when they're looking at Instas and Snaps all night. Teens rarely send snaps of themselves picking their nose on a Saturday night in their room, even though a lot of them are really doing just that. Everyone seems to be at a party, having a great time, at something, and they're not invited, and it leads to a lot of anxiety, depression, and especially loneliness. For generations, middle schoolers and high schoolers had terrible days. You remember back in those days, and then you got home and you can get away from it. But now they never really get away from it because it's in their pocket and the social pressure is really constant. I also use the opportunity to mention that anything they snap, post, email, or text is there forever, even if they delete it. So don't send anything you wouldn't want every kid at school to read, every teacher, or your mother, or yes, especially your grandmother. Their bed should be for reading and sleeping, not watching. This includes PCs, tablets, iPads. Certainly, you shouldn't be playing video games in your bedroom on Discord for hours. That never belongs in your bedroom. Now, sometimes parents will need to just shut down the Wi-Fi by a certain time, either by an app or by just unplugging that vertical thing, which is the router. Parents do have options limiting kids online. They could actually stop paying for the phone, but it's better to try to be positive than to get into punishments. This is the first generation of parents who are raising their kids in a fully digital era, and it is really, really difficult. And I sometimes end this cell phone discussion by asking the mom or dad in the room, so where do you keep your cell phone at night? And that's really fun because most parents also keep it next to their bed. And then the teen smirks, and then the parents say, well, it's my alarm clock, or I need it for work, or I have an elderly relative who may call. But seriously, if the phone was on the other side of the room, they would still be able to hear it if work called, if an elderly grandmother called. And I point out that having the phone near the bed and sleep issues is not a kid issue only, it's a big adult issue. A lot of adults sit there at midnight and they're watching a cat video even though they're exhausted every morning. The difference is though that the teens are growing up with it from the get-go, and that has to do harm long term. But again, I point out that mom and dad pay for the phone, they can do whatever they want, but really if they want to talk the talk, it's nice to walk the walk. And I usually can get both the parents and the kids to agree that they will put the phone away from their bed nightstand for at least a week. Now I know when they get home and they're in the car, they're probably going to say, nope, we're not going to do that. But sometimes it works, and I'll go for the sometimes. All right, that's question number 1 on screens, and stay tuned for question number 2. I hope you enjoyed this. Good night, Moon.